so when's the best time to do to do cost segregation, right? I mean, so I know we've talked before that, you can start doing a cost seg while, say they're building a nice big commercial property, say a big office building or something like that, right? So you can start on the cost segregation as that is being constructed, correct?
Yep. So there's three kind of periods when we start to talk to someone that they are going to fall into, which is going to be they're in development, breaking ground. The best, when you will get the most bang for your buck, because we don't charge more for it, is to have us consulting throughout your build. And the reason why, to get back to some of the principles of cost seg, what we've taken and accelerated is all of the items that are deemed the useful life deemed shorter than the building. So if you're imagining when you purchase, a building, we'll get to development in a second. You've got trees, a little path, you got your door, right? There's all these things that come slapped onto your balance sheet. Let's say, again, this is your balance sheet. Some accountants are going to put this as $1 million, and they'll normally call it the property's address when we're reviewing financials. That's pretty common. Well, you've purchased a lot more than just that line item. That make sense? Really, you purchased, let's just say 200 assets. The kitchen counter, the cabinets, the flooring,
Plumbing, electricity.
like that. My God. If I showed you guys our fully built out thing, you'd be like, yeah, that all makes sense, but holy crap, there's so many things that go into a building, right? And so we come through, and what we do is we got this fixed asset ledger. Okay. And what we're doing, just like you would see on your tax returns, is we're just taking every item in the house and placing it into the useful lives that you would, assign those things if you went through and did it appropriately. And then over here, we've got this big line. These are short assets and long-term assets. Okay. Or short life is better for you guys. Long life assets, because we're talking about the useful life here. This is years. Okay.
So some of the stuff's 5 years, some could be 7,
Yep.
10, 15.
Yep. So, and our job is to, as aggressively as possible, put you into this category. And the reason why is because who wants to buy and hold a house forever? Guaranteed, right? So if we're locking you in, 15 is you can't change. That's your external, it's all your landscaping. But between 5 and 7, we're trying to get as aggressive with that one as we can within, the ability of the law. Because what happens if you sell it right here is you get no depreciation recapture on this bucket. So you could have, which we'll get into, a 0% of it depreciation recapture. You normally have some staggering into these other boxes and buckets, but we'll deal with that in a second. So that's kind of the essence of what we're trying to build out. Now, to address Brian's question, which is when should we come in? Well, if we know in our minds these items, and I know the useful life, right? When I'm talking to a client or looking through their budget, their construction budget, they may have something right here and it says, 1.5 million of tile, right? If we flip that material to like luxury vinyl, that becomes 39 year down to a first year, right? So we can take 1.5 million and put it in one of those buckets that gets accelerated this year. And for us, it's almost no work. They'll just say, here's our budget. It takes me maybe 10 minutes, and I'll just go through and I yellow highlight it and say, there's your short life items. Then I'll put a little green one on ones that they could flip if they wanted to. They'll normally go and talk to whoever's in charge of design, who says, no, the lobby must be marble. And we go, okay. It's a very back and forth thing. We're just letting them know, right? And we invite clients to ask us these questions and stay in touch with us. We just had a really cool rooftop bar that they were doing on about the 23rd floor, that they were asking us what would be the deduction if they in the things just being built still. So they were wondering what would happen if they ran fire pits, this big badass fire pit through the whole upstairs piece. Well, it's all going to be short life because of all the different tax law. So if they spend the $87,000 to have it, they're also getting effectively about 37% discount because they'll have a liability and their tax bracket is going to be pretty high, which brings us actually to one other point. which I think is important before we move into the other two times you can bring us on, which is, you know, just how the tax brackets work. A lot of people understand this, but at a certain point, you'll just be paying 37%. So we almost always consult larger clients at 37. But this is for the realtors in the room type of situation. If somebody's making 400,000 a year, you do need to take a look at what we provide, our realized value of how much taxes we can save them, and what the actual percentage, it might be closer to 23%. When we take a look, so there is a bit of a break even. A good rule is right around 750,000 plus. We're coming out just nothing but ROI on our work. We've got our fees, and then it doesn't matter if, you know, we did about 120,000 for our engagement with that hotel. We started about 10K. So 72,750,000. So you can tell our fees don't grow at the same rate as people's returns. That's another reason the larger the portfolio or the project, this just becomes a no-brainer. With one other item, which is how long you hold it. For my fix and flips, I think I heard a gentleman who is the coach of all coaches on getting those organizationally managed, is not good for fix and flips. So that's also why it's nice to have us in early. We can consult and let people know, because if we come in and they say, hey, I'd love to cost seg this. We got it 3 months ago and this was our strategy. Potentially, maybe it would have been a perfect one to have held for 2 years, let it be a cash flowing, you know, asset, and then sell it once we've had the cost seg benefit play out a little bit more, as opposed to just turning around and selling it. If you sell it in the same year we do our work, you never even file our stuff. That is like, we see that with other, so there's various levels of cost seg firms, like you'll see anywhere else. They'll say, oh yeah, let's do it, and they've got none of the other tax kind of implications and understandings. And so I'll talk to a client that said, yeah, I did cost seg, and we'll look at their stuff, and then they did a cost seg the year and they sold it that year, which means our depreciation schedule never existed with the IRS. So there's some other things. The second one is going to be right when you buy. And this is great for someone who's just buying, they're not developing. The day they purchase, we want to get in there immediately. Ideally, before they start to do what?
Depreciate. Renovations.
No renovations, yeah.
Renovations. Okay. So that leads us, first one is develop, right? That one's pretty straightforward. So if you're developing, you're good there. The second one is like right at when you sign the settlement statement. Okay. Because what happens here is we've already got everything we need to do the cost seg. We have access to the property. We have what your purchase price is, which is not off the value. All of our stuff is off the purchase price. So if someone's got a $500,000 building and they say, hey, it's worth 1.5 now, we are stuck at that. Maybe it's been 4 or 5 years. It's just another good tidbit. So once they get the settlement statements, we can then get in there and do our job, because what happens a lot of time is, let's just say we've got a $1 million asset again. My favorite example of this, because you can kind of imagine it, is it needs some renovations. And one of the first things that most people are going to do is the kitchen. So the kitchen needs updating, but we've gone through now and we've built out this fixed asset ledger. So I can select the 13 items or the 30 items that go on into the kitchen to make it up. So we've got those items. We know what they are. Let's just say it's worth 60K. They go in and put $100,000 into the kitchen. What's their total deduction?
160. Well, 80% of 160.
Oh, even better. That's the actual. Well, depends on when they place it in service, right. But if it's this year, but that's really correct. But the idea is this is about as close as you can get with the IRS to double dipping. Because what we do is we take this actually as a distinguished asset. And that ends up getting pretty much disposal of assets is another term for this, where this is now removed. We've destroyed an asset. Do we pay for it? When we purchased that $1 million house, do we pay for that kitchen?
Yeah.
So now we rip the kitchen out. So we get to take an expense on that. Then we put this new one in. And if it's bonus depreciable at your different rates, you're going to get the 100% of this guy right here. Or right now, a little note, we're at 80%. So the laws change with time, just everything that was purchased. So if you have a client between about 2017 to 2022 that has a property, they will get 100% depreciation of all of these items that are below the long-term asset, all of that 15-year and below stuff. Right now, whatever that number is, we take it and we have to times it by 0.8 because that's what you're allowed to accelerate. So some more nuanced stuff, and a fun thing, I would invite anyone here who sits through all of this, feel free, use the firm, send us an example. We'll go through a real building, and that's why I love whiteboarding, is like, on paper, this makes no sense. When you're like, hey, I've got this building, can you show me an estimate? Takes us 10 to 15 minutes. We look at the Zillow, we look at how high end it is, that type of stuff. Mark's a great example. He signed, he really wanted to understand the stuff. He just came and joined us for the site visit. You're totally welcome to come to any of your own site visits. You meet the whole team. We're not loud. We don't use power tools. We're just a bunch of lasers and clipboards. It takes a couple hours and you'll learn a lot because you can pick their brain on why certain plumbing is going to work and why it's not, that type of thing. So here's the second one, which right when you sign. The third one, which actually has some benefits, but we wouldn't choose it if we could, right, is later. So later.
Is this the look back?
Forever. Okay, the thing about cost seg is you are not amending returns. All of our other services, we have to amend the returns. We hit statute of limitations at a certain point. We have to tell a client, no matter how great it would have been, it's gone. There's no fixing what we could have done if we had done this last year, whenever the case is. This one, there's a very nice little form they've made for us, and we get to go back and just because it's called a change of accounting methods. Depreciation is the next little line on that form. And all we do is say, you know, hey, in 2012, we purchased this. We'd like to now flip this entire project to this new fixed asset ledger. The nice thing about that, if we come in late, now we're coming in right here. So we get to take all the stuff we would have taken, then we accelerate, right? Then, because you're already past your 5 years, these are the ones where we can cost seg them and sell them the next day, and you still get a huge benefit because all of those assets, when you catch them back up to short life, they're depreciated. But that's a little bit into the weeds on that. The downside is whatever our number is going to be cut in half as far as the acceleration because you've already claimed the short life through that period. So we're only actually grabbing this tail piece to accelerate. So our numbers, while this works, it is still great and it's a wonderful tool because it's just open-ended. The number is going to be significantly less every quarter or half that you are going through the 39-year process. But we have not had any 35+ year buildings. We'll get one at some point. I have all my friends, I have a lot of friends in cost seg, like, yeah, we got a guy from 85 or whatever, came, he still wanted it done. It's big enough to make sense to accelerate 5 years or whatever. It's like, okay. So it doesn't have, which is very rare in our world. It's an open-ended piece. So those are kind of the 3 times you can come in and do it. I would highly recommend if you're in development to make sure that you have us come in, if nothing else, before you start to put in the finishing. Because we want photo evidence of the interior so that we can substantiate without having to go through the blueprints and be conservative. Yes, I double checked. They did have to move this pipe and run it through here because of issues. Just because it's written on a piece of paper, we have had the IRS when people, you know, take just a blueprint at face value, cut the wall. Go ahead and prove it, whatever it is. We've had a pool one time. We've had some issues. It's costly if you don't get it. So it's great for us to come in and get our photos and our evidence while the skeleton's kind of there. Another thing to be picturing when it comes to cost seg, we're really taking everything but the dirt and like the foundation and buildings like skeleton. So you don't get drywall. There's kind of some wishy-washy stuff in between where that line is, but in general, who knows what FF&E is?
Fixtures and equipment.
Yeah. Okay, here's one more really good pro tip, because how are you guys ever going to know if your CPA or cost seg providers are doing great work? This is like the easiest way in the world. You've got kind of a tier 1 where they've got this $1 million building and it's on your balance sheet at $1 million. What's our problem with that? Any more tech-minded people getting technical with why when you pay $1 million for something, you can't have that whole thing in one bucket on your balance sheet? Correct. So land does not depreciate. You can't take it. It's never going back. Well, everybody wants to own it, and it's been such a strong thing for so long. That's why real estate is great when it's on it. But honestly, what's really holding down that market is that piece of land, especially depending on where it is, right? So that land needs to be the first thing that comes out. So let's just say we have a $1 million property and we deem that 300,000 of it is the land. Then we have 700,000 of building and 300K of land. If you don't see this on your guys' current balance sheets, it should be like your easiest to spot red flag in the world. If your current accountant is taking this number here and dividing it by 1/39th, you are depreciating land. It's not the end of the world. It's not like you need to be checking your, everybody's phones out and make sure that the tickers aren't going the wrong way type of thing. But it's definitely something just to be aware of if you own property. Some people own quite a bit. You should be able to look and vet your CPA through that. The third tier, that's kind of,
Oh, okay, Brian.
Go ahead.
When you went to say you should be looking for, I was like, a new account.
Yeah.
They come with that.
Yeah,
What is that?
I'm not I don't love to throw out that type of thought process, but absolutely. Absolutely. If your accountant's depreciating land, you should fire them for sure. I'll go ahead and say that on stage here. So the next thing that we have, number 3 is going to be when you get into kind of our realm. And a quick kind of overview of what cost segregation is and where it falls within companies. So at a big 4, you've got your audit, and then you've got your tax, and then you kind of have this consulting. And those are, for the most part, there's a lot of other stuff they do because they're huge, but those are the buckets that accountants kind of land in. Within the consulting practice, you have a little practice called STS, which is what we've dubbed ourselves because that's what we're doing, which is specialized tax services. When everybody else in the firm has a question, the legals and accountants in that little bubble are who answer those questions on their respective sliver. So like a good example of that is research and development tax credits. So when someone is, doing a large client, Fortune 500 style, and they say, hey, there's R&D here, they're not going to try to handle it. And this is kind of the same thing with your CPA. If you're trying to get your current CPA to take a swing, whatever you do, you're probably not far off. It's definitely going to be something that they should at least consult or have. We do 2 different types of engagements. One where we do the whole thing. The second one is to consult and say, hey, I took a swing at this. Where am I at with these things? Either one, we're a resource for CPAs to come to. So we kind of got 2 different practices. One is where the CPAs come to us and we consult them and make them look great. And they've done the right thing by asking us, for kind of a second opinion. And our second one is the client facing side. We do more and more 50-50 as I keep coming out and meeting the client side, but traditionally we were almost 100% on the CPA side. Eric Workman, you think he's got a question?
No, not here.
Hey guys, hey guys down there. I'm sorry about the view. Okay. So the next thing that we have here is going to be that like kind of your specialist, right? And that's going to be someone who either can do a cost seg or call someone in, and you've got the kind of cost seg team. So the cost seg team is going to go above this. Like I mentioned, we're going to end up having a new fixed asset ledger. And this is really what you want, especially above that 750,000. It's very worth it. The estimate takes us about 5-10 minutes, 20 if it's a big project, and we'll get you some basic numbers. It's pretty straightforward. If it's, hey, I can get you $200,000 or $5 million of a deduction this year. Are you interested in holding this property maybe an extra 18 months? Sure, I think I would rather have the cash flow than the quick flip and the short-term capital gains. So